Are you ready for Earth's astonishing events? Earth, it begins! Prepare for Jesus' second coming. Are you ready to see our remarkable transformation? What science suggests this big catastrophe is imminent? Are you ready for the huge changes that will remake our world? We'll examine the divine's mysteries and the awe-inspiring trip ahead. Will you see Jesus' victorious return? There are a number of earth-shattering occurrences that must take place before Christ's return in the second coming. In contrast, the rapture of the church is always portrayed as happening very soon in the Bible. The second coming, on the other hand, is the culmination of God's work on earth to usher in the millennial kingdom of Christ. There are a lot of prophecies about this time period, and knowing them will help you examine how the world is currently shaping up in anticipation of the events they predict. An imperial Roman comeback. While the Roman Empire is not specifically referenced in Daniel's description of the four great empires in chapter 7, it is easy to see the connection. The prophet Daniel sees four big beasts in a vision in Daniel 7. The lion stands for Babylon, the bear for Media-Persia, and the leopard for Alexander the Big's dominion. Daniel 8:20-21 identifies the Medo-Persian and Greek empires as the second and third respectively, so the student of Daniel's predictions does not have to speculate. The fourth beast that comes after the Greek Empire is not identified by name, but is described as terrifying and frightening and very powerful. Its jaws were like iron hammers, crushing and devouring its prey before trampling the remains. Unlike the other creatures, this one had 10 horns. From a divine perspective, this description of the Fourth Empire appropriately describes the Roman Empire. By leaving legions of soldiers in each country they conquered, the Roman legion was able to impose their rule and capture able-bodied males as slaves. In each nation, it devoured its victims and trampled underfoot in the literal sense. Among the 11 kingdoms mentioned in Daniel, the fourth beast was identified as a fourth kingdom that will appear on earth. It will be unlike any previous dominion and will trample and destroy the entire planet. According to Daniel 7:23-24, the 10 horns are 10 kings who will arise from this kingdom. Except for the Roman Empire, which never expanded to include 10 separate states, all four prophecies have come true in actual history. So many people expect this to happen someday after the church has been raptured. Many Old Testament end-of-the-world predictions skip over the intervening centuries between the first and second comings of Christ. This is true of the image's feet in Daniel 2 and of the prophecy of the fourth kingdom, which seems to have vanished today, but which, according to Scripture, will be resurrected as a confederation of 10 nations just before the return of Christ. Jesus Christ's return from heaven to put an end to the fourth kingdom makes it apparent that this type of kingdom will arise prior to Christ's second arrival. Antichrist's appearance in the world. Daniel was also warned that the empire will be divided into 10 kingdoms, with the 11th horn being the conquering monarch of them all, to wit. While I was considering the horns, lo and behold, there before me was another horn, a little one which came up among them, and 3 of the first horns were uprooted before it. This 11th horn, which had eyes like the eyes of a man and a mouth that spoke boastfully, is certainly a different monarch from the 10 previously described kings. In response to Daniel's question, God revealed the following in Daniel 7:24. After them, another king will arise, different from the earlier ones. He will subdue 3 kings. According to Daniel 7:23, this future world ruler will initially conquer 10 separate kingdoms before expanding his power to encompass the entire globe. Another prophetic vision about this fourth beast is found in Revelation 13:1-10. According to Revelation 13:1, it sports 10 horns in addition to 10 crowns. All the previous empires, represented by a lion, a bear, and a leopard, are brought together by the beast in the ultimate empire. According to John, the beast I saw resembled a leopard, but had feet like those of a bear and a mouth like that of a lion. Daniel 7 and Revelation 13 hint at a future global empire that will be a resurgence of the Roman Empire that existed during Christ's earthly ministry. Revelation 13:5-7 detail the global reach of this empire. For 42 whole months, the monster had a voice with which to boast and blaspheme, and with which to assert his dominion. He spoke ill of the Almighty, his holy temple, and the inhabitants of the heavenly realm. He was given the ability to wage war on the saints and ultimately defeat them, and all peoples, languages, and nations submitted to his rule. For the next 42 months, this ruler will preside over the international community. The last 3.5 years before the return of Christ span this 42-month period. At that time, difficulties not seen before will arise. There will be a time of sorrow unlike any since the beginning of nations, as prophesied in Daniel 12:1. However, when that time comes, every one of your people who are in the book will be saved. For then there will be immense distress, unsurpassed from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. Christ informed some of the disciples in reference to the time immediately preceding his second coming. No one could have survived if God hadn't intervened, but for the sake of the elect, those days will be shortened. In Matthew, Christ then goes on to tell his disciples that the end of the tribulation period would come with the second coming of Jesus Christ. Immediately following the anguish of those days, the sun will be darkened and the moon will not give its light. The stars will fall from the sky and the heavenly bodies will be shaken. At that time, the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky, and all the nations of the earth will weep. They will witness the Son of Man riding the clouds to earth in all his majesty and power. The Israel Accords. In the 7 years before his return, Christ will deal with the Gentile world, represented by the coalition of 10 nations, and the world empire that follows, as prophesied by Daniel. Beginning with the rebuilding of Jerusalem in 444 BC, this is part of the 70 times 7 years of God's dealing with the Israelites. These 490 years, however, are broken up into 3 periods, with the first 2 periods occurring simultaneously, and the third period occurring 7 years after the previous era, during which time God is calling forth his church. However, once the church is raptured, God will be able to bring about the fulfillment of the final 7 years described in Daniel 9:27. He will confirm a covenant with many for 1 7, and in the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. Anyone who rejects or pretends to replace Christ is an antichrist. Dear children, this is the last hour. And as you have heard that the Antichrist is coming, even now many antichrists have come. The Apostle John wrote. John goes on to explain who an antichrist is by asking, "Who is the liar?" This refers to the individual who rejects Jesus as the Messiah. If anyone denies both the Father and the Son, he cannot be saved. He is the Antichrist. In addition, in 1 John 4:3, "But every spirit that does not acknowledge Jesus is not from God." John defines an Antichrist as someone who denies that Christ came in the flesh as God. As explained in 2 John 7, this is the spirit of the Antichrist that you have heard is coming into the world. Since the prefix anti means opposed to or against, the coming world ruler who initially rules over 10 nations and ultimately becomes dictator over the entire globe is called the Antichrist. There are 3 distinct times before the second coming, the rapture. The time between the rapture and the second coming can be broken down into 3 distinct phases. In the first stage, the 10-nation monarchy arises after a brief period of preparation. Its leader quickly comes to power, first over 3 kingdoms, then over all 10. With the support of the 10 kingdoms, this figure will rise to prominence and be in a position to form the 7-year covenant with Israel mentioned in Daniel 9:27. This marks the beginning of the second time frame, which accounts for the first 3 of the covenant's 7 years. Midway through the 7 years, however, a significant shift occurs, and the monarch of the 10 kingdoms ostensibly becomes a global dictator with no visible war breaking out. This prepares the way for the third epoch, the final 3.5 years before Christ returns. There is a 7-year period, but before that, there is a preparatory time. After that, there will be a time of tranquility lasting 3.5 years, followed by a third period of extreme adversity. The end of the third epoch will be promptly followed by the second coming. The Russian War. In Ezekiel 38 and 39, the prophet predicts an unusual conflict in which several nations, including Russia, will launch a surprise attack on Israel when it is at peace. Several interpretations of the prophecy have been proposed, but it appears that the Soviet invasion will occur in the first 3.5 years before the return of Christ. This would be the fulfillment of Ezekiel 38 and the beginning of the millennium. Russia and her allies will be completely wiped out in this conflict. After the invaders are destroyed, the world's status will alter, but it will look a lot like it does now. Russia and its allies will be at odds with the rest of the world. It seems that the leader of the 10 kingdoms will be able to declare himself world dictator once Russia's army has been destroyed. With no major military power standing in his way, a global empire will spring up overnight. At the outset of his global reign, people everywhere will wonder, who is like the beast? Who could possibly fight him in a war? The answer is that no one can challenge the 10 kingdoms monarch's rightful position as global dictator. When this happens, the world empire will suddenly emerge, and the Middle Eastern ruler will break his covenant with Israel, turning on her instead of protecting her in 3.5 years before the return of Christ. According to Revelation 13:8, the future global leader will assert not only divine authority, but also political dominion over every nation on earth. Worst of the worst, Armageddon. The next world dictator will usher in a period of horrible persecution by the government and God's punishment upon the world, as foretold in the violation of the covenant with Israel. Revelation 6-18 provides a detailed account of the tribulations to come. During this time, God will send disasters and persecute anyone who doesn't worship the world ruler. John is shown a scroll with 7 seals. The breaking of each seal heralds a momentous occurrence on earth as the scroll is unrolled. There are some very catastrophic events among them. The first seal represents the global empire revealed at the start of the 3.5-year period. This is symbolized by the bow that fires no arrow, indicating the establishment of a global empire with no preceding conflict. Many people are predicted to suffer from war and food shortages. The fourth seal indicates that God's anger will be at its peak, with 1/4 of the world's inhabitants being wiped out. Those who refuse to worship the world ruler as God are depicted in heaven, waiting for the day of judgment described in the 5th seal. According to the 6th seal, this is when the sun will become dark, the moon will turn blood red, and the stars will fall from the sky. There will be a massive earthquake that knocks every mountain and island off its foundations. The second set of 7s, the trumpets, will emerge from the 7th seal. 1/3 of the world's inhabitants will be wiped out, and 1/3 of the earth's land will be judged as each trumpet is played. There will be widespread natural disasters and conflict once more. A third set of events, the bowls of God's wrath, will follow the 7th trumpet. Each of these ushers in yet another catastrophic judgment from earth, one that typically affects the entire planet. Those who have been worshiping the world ruler and his image in the temple will suffer excruciating anguish when the first bowl of judgment is poured forth. The second bowl represents God's punishment for the ocean, which results in the death of all marine life. Water sources will be tainted by the third bowl of God's wrath, turning them into rivers of blood. The fourth bowl will cause the sun's orbit to be thrown off, resulting in scorching temperatures. Because of the chaos in the sky brought on by the fifth bowl, the earth will be thrown into darkness. The Euphrates River will be dried up by the sixth bowl, allowing a massive army from the east to march on the Holy Land and participate in the final Great War. According to Revelation 16:17-21, the final bowl of wrath will consist of a worldwide earthquake that will wipe out all human settlements, level mountains, and wipe out entire island chains. Thanks for watching. For more, subscribe to our channel.